I'm going to go to my WDS server, sign in. First thing we're going to install is the DHCP and the WDS software. If you want to change your display settings, you choose the top resolution, 1920 by 1080. We're going to add roles and features. We're going to go all the way down until we get to server roles. DHCP, add the tools to manage it. Windows Deployment Service, add the tools to manage it. And just walk through the wizard making no other changes, then click install.
Okay, yeah, so it's going to be, give you a little bit of time, right? Okay, so you can't do it on this machine, you got to do it on WDS. You can check the box, it's not going to have any difference, but yes. It's a restart if needed. It won't definitely restart.
While that's installing, I'm going to unmaximize the WDS. I'm going to install a DVD drive and put the installation disk in that DVD drive, because we're going to need that for the WDS server. So I'm going to go File, Settings on the WDS, only on the WDS. I'm going to highlight this SCSI controller, add a DVD drive, highlight DVD drive, then click the Add button. We're going to search for an image file. We'll click Browse. We're going to go to the data disk. Under this PC, the data disk, the ISO folder, and we're going to choose the bottom disk. So we're going to click Open. Okay. Now my installation is done. We talked about this last time. Before your DHCP server can actually function, you have to complete this installation, which creates two groups and authorizes your server as a legitimate server for your network. So we're going to click on this complete configuration, DHCP configuration. How many people aren't here yet? Okay. I'm going to complete, click next. I'm signing in as a domain admin, that's important. Then click commit. Close, then close. If you need me, you gotta call me back. Guys, generally I will not sit down in class.
So I have to wait until you click on flag. So you got it right now. There's nothing you can do until that's correct. Wait till that. Now you got it. Click the link.
Yeah, goes. So guys, I generally don't sit down because you guys won't want to call me over. Part of your script, Mark.
What station? Which step?
So that's right. Yeah, guys, we're authorizing this for our network, not this individual machine. I think you're fine. I think just a restart to normal.
Okay, so he's done right now, so just.
Let me see. No, that's not done.
Are we supposed to get this thing very soon? Probably just.
2.
Okay. Type C. Open up command. Now type, oh, no, you're right, never mind. Just type group line, one more. So you're signing in as the right person. Reboot, track it. Okay.
Just restart the workflow.
Yes. Okay. Were you having issues?
We both had that same error that he had.
Try to do me a restart. I don't think it's an error. Because you're signed in as the right person. So, the general rule of thumb, when in doubt, reboot.
Then you want us to just add those same roles and features again?
No, we don't need to add. You're just going to click on the notification flag and then try to recommit.
Okay.
I'm just going to wait here until you guys are.
Does it work for you?
Complete DHCP config?
Yep.
Okay. Wait. That failed authorizing the DHCP stuff.
Okay. I will do. Oh, who you signed in?
I'm the administrator.
Main admin or local? Contesto / administrator?
Yeah, contest.
Okay, we'll deal with this later. I'll show you how to keep on. Did it work for you?
That's it. Yeah, okay.
Okay, we'll handle that later.
Same.
Okay. So, click on Tools,
DHCP. For those people that got the authorization failed error, highlight your server and tell me what it says right there.
I'm not gonna.
Same thing.
okay, so that means it failed because it was already authorized. Okay. Even though you got the error the first time, it actually worked.
Okay.
You call me?
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you say, my computer station?
Because the script got screwed up. Local.
Just change the menu?
Yeah, click there.
Change it.
Yeah. Now, guys, here's the other thing. In Windows 2016, this always worked well. But I can run a command called add-computer that does two things. Joins it to the domain and renames the computer at the same time. Never had an issue with that command before. 2019, sometimes it fails renaming. I had 2 people that had the failed renaming. Just manually rename it.
So I'm going to right click IPv4 and say new scope. This is like a subnet. These are the IPs I'm going to pass out. Click next. I'm going to call it private. Press your numlock. And put it in the subnet ID as the description. It's not required.
Is that 16?
That's a 172.16.0.0/16. Now I'm going to, for the IP range, I'm going to type 172.16.0.1 for the start IP. 172.16.255.254 as the end IP. Again, this topic is in the next class. So I'll go and describe this in more detail in the next class. Some people take a picture of it, then zoom in if they have a hard time seeing. Click next. Now I'm going to exclude the first 100. I'm going to reserve those for my servers that will use static IPs. And then click the Add button. I'm going to leave the lease for 8 days. I'm going to configure additional options. And my gateway for my network is 172.16.0.1. Then click the Add button. It populates my domain name and DNS server automatically. We don't have a Win server, old technology. And yes, I want to activate it now. Then click Finish. You always get that blue symbol. Just highlight IPv4, hit refresh, and it goes away. Green check means it is up and running.
Mine's red.
Okay, so for you that is red, highlight your server, right click, and what does it say right there?
It says add, backup, restore. I don't have to unauthorize.
Do you have authorized? Because if your DC is down, you can't authorize the server. Okay, I'll come back to that once that DC is up and running. Once the DC is up and running, reboot your DHCP. So guys, the next thing we're going to do is now configure the WDS. This is going to be the server that allows us to install Windows operating systems from the network and to automate that installation. I'm going to highlight my server and say configure server. Here's all the prereqs which we meet. It's going to be integrated in Active Directory. It's going to create a network share. This is where it's going to store all the images at. That's the local folder. It'll share it as a remote install. It's saying you shouldn't put it on the same partition as your operating system because it's going to use up a lot of disk space. For this lab, we're just going to leave it on the same partition. We don't want this machine to listen on the DHCP ports because the DHCP is on the same machine. All WDS server is a DHCP server and a TFTP server. So we don't want to use a DHCP option or part of this because we really have a DHCP server.
Respond to all client computers. Check the box. It crashes. Can't help this, it just crashes all the time. Oh, it actually worked this time. No, it didn't. It's like, so it crashed. No big deal, we'll handle it. So I'm going to click finish, right click the server, all task, manually start it. If that wizard didn't crash, it would have asked us for an install image and a boot image. That's the only thing left in the wizard, so we're just going to manually add those. That's fine. I'm going to leave that with that there. I didn't change the location. So we're going to click finish and crash. Before we go on, we're going to do another thing. What station number? Type CS07 hyphen WDS hyphen DHCP. Click OK. Click OK. Click close. And restart. I don't want to wait for it. Go to DTV. Connect. Get connect. Sign in as Contoso /administrator. So for those people that just got in and your server crashed, right click, all task, start. You need a green play button as opposed to a red, as opposed to a black box. Then want to right click again and go to properties. Under Pixie response, check that box. Guys, we also have a new glitch that we discovered this version. Go to the TFTP, uncheck that box. We're not going to let the client choose sliding windows. It's going to be a set size. Click OK. Okay, now we're going to add images. Last time, guys, I had you copy them. We're still going to copy them, but not right now. We're just going to go directly to the DVD drive. I'm going to right-click, add an install image. Excuse me. I'm going to highlight install images, then right-click and add install image. It's going to create a folder under the remote install called image group 1. You can create your own folder hierarchy. It's not really a group, it's just a folder that all those similar images will fit into. We could call this server or client or whatever we want. I'm going to go browse, go to my DVD, go to the sources folder, and then choose install Win. This actually holds the copy of the actual installation files. I have 4 in a WIM file. You can have multiple images. In an image file, you can have multiple images. We only want 1. So we're going to unselect everything but the second one, just to save some time. Do you remember when we booted up that client and it says choose an image to install? It's getting it from this list. We're only going to put 1, just to save some time in adding them. Click next, next, give it a minute. Click finish. Now we're going to add some boot images. Highlight boot images, right click and say add boot image. This is what we're going to pass to the client when it first boots up so it can load an OS to do the installation. Add a boot image. Browse to boot.wim. The image is going to be called Windows Setup. If we have multiple boot images, we can dual boot off the network. I could have an image, instead of doing an installation, do a capture. Basically, let's say I want to create a custom image that I want to pass out to all my clients. So I can boot up a capture image. Instead of deploying an image, it will copy the hard disk to an image file for me. We will do that. Click next, next.
President.
Yes.
This is being recorded, right?
Yes. I have mixed feelings about the recording because what happens is people create, I call recipe books. They just record, right click, left click. Derek knows I'm talking about him because I've seen his notes. And I want you to understand what's going on and read the screen, and you'll recall what it's really asking. Click finish. So guys, our WDS has all the basic things that it needs to function. So we're going to test it. We're going to go to our real machine, go to Hyper-V. We're going to create a new client to see if we can connect to our WDS and install an image. So I'm going to go new virtual machine.
We're going to click
Next, we're going to call this test 01. Generation 2. Dynamic memory. Because we're booting off the network, we need to have at least 2 gigs start memory. We're going to attach it to a network switch. It's going to create a blank hard disk. We're going to say install from the network. Finish. We're going to connect to it, then start it. I'm going to press enter. Now it's waiting for approval. Where do we approve it?
WVS.
Go back to your WDS. And what happens if nothing shows up in this window? What do you need to do?
Refresh the drive.
Refresh. So in this case, we're going to name and approve.
There's no items popping up for me, but
Highlight here, and you click refresh.
pending, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you, what happened on your test client? Does it show this?
Oh, that's what it says restart now.
Okay, let me come back then and walk.
Refresh.
What if I did approve, I didn't do name and approve. Does that really matter?
Not in this case.
Yeah.
But down the road it will matter, because when you do name and approve, it sets an environmental variable called, I believe it's called this. And we're going to use that environmental variable to name our computer.
Okay.
Yeah, it gives it a random name, right?
No, we don't want that.
Oh, okay.
We want to specify the name of the computer. Guys, if you look on the front of your computers, you see a yellow sticker. That's our inventory number. That's called an asset tag. Generally, computers are named based on their asset tag. One of the hardest things to do is when you're automatically deploying images is to set the name of the computer properly. Well, this will do it. You know, have you run into that problem?
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't really have a protocol where I work, but I've started to implement something.
And people have written scripts that are thousands of lines long, and it doesn't need to. Just do that name and approve, and then we'll name it.
Are you good? I accidentally did just approve just
Okay.
again, but.
Okay, it's not going to have a major issue now.
There we go.
Oh, you got it. Okay. So I'm going to go name and approve mine, and when I approve it, I'm going to call it test 01, all lowercase. Click next, and just walk through the wizard. It's supposed to join it to the domain, but it's not going to because I actually named and approved it as a domain admin. When I created that computer account and I pre-staged it, I created it as the domain admin, so at that point it will never join the domain. And my only guess is Microsoft is doing that intentionally because deploying images as the domain admin is like trying to scrape bubblegum off a sidewalk with a wrecking ball. You know, it's overkill, and you're eventually going to mess yourself up. Someone's going to get a hold of that account and really. Okay, so if I go back to my client, it's asking me for languages. It's asking me to sign into the DC or to the WDS to get the name of the images I can download and install. I only have one image. Yep, and just walk through the wizard. Let it do its thing. Okay, while that is going on, guys, we're going to go back to the WDS and reinstall ADK for Windows 10. So go to your browser. It's going to run a little slow because we're deploying an image.
Go ahead and download ADK for Windows 10. Okay, I'm gonna set my default browser so I don't have to keep setting this.
So I'm going to do ADK for Windows 10. I'm going to click on this blog one, choose the first link, and what did I do wrong? Click the download link. After I accept it, the only thing I need to install is the deployment tools. Click install, let it do its thing. I'm going to go back to my client, see how it's doing. It's rebooting right now.
guys, you can figure out what you need to do through, this is called mini setup incidentally. Do this, set the password to, I don't care what you set it to. This machine, we're really not using it for anything. We're just testing to make sure our WDS server is working. After this is done, you're caught up. You'll be right with us. Do this later. So we were able to successfully deploy an image. Honestly, I don't need the image. I'm just going to turn it off and delete it. We just used it to test to make sure our WDS is working. It's like you guys got really attached to that server image really quickly. So now we're going to try to automate that installation. We're going to create some answer files. Let's do our next break, and then we'll come back and start doing that. So what we're going to do is create some XML files that, and I gave you copies of them. They might not work because these are for 2016, because we're using 2019 now. But they're going to be very similar. And these are going to be used to answer all these questions. We need two. One for the first part where we boot to WinPE and answer all these questions. Another one for the mini setup where we select our language, set our password, and things like that. But before we do any of that, we need to create a user account to do deployments with. We don't want to do deployments with our domain admin. So we're going to connect to our DC. So go to Hyper-V, highlight your DC and say connect. Sign in Contoso / administrator. Again, I need to fix my screen resolution. All of the accounts that we use in our network exist on this machine. They don't exist on each individual server. All the user accounts are centralized to this machine. The machine connects to here to get the user account info. So if you create a user account here, you'll be able to use that user account on all your machines. So I'm going to click on Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers. I'm going to drill down until I get to the users container. We're going to right click it, go to new users. Sometimes, guys, you might have to click on it first, then right click. Highlight it, then right click. First name join, last name domain. The user login name is join domain, no space. Join domain, no space, all lowercase. Click next. We're going to unselect this so they don't have to change their password first time they log in. And use our standard password. Did Derek have to go?
Oh, no.
Okay, that's fine. No, you can keep him caught up. Thank you. And just click finish. Just click next and finish. So we created this user account. Here's the problem. Now we need to make sure this user account isn't abused for anything other than deploying images. We don't want end users to use this to sign on to any machine. The only machine that they should sign on to is our WDS. They're going to use this account to log into the WDS to deploy images, and that's it. So the nice thing about, I close that window down, a domain controller is I can create settings and push them out to all my computers in my network. And we call those group policies. So we're going to go from tools to group policy management. For some reason it minimizes, so click down here. You're going to drill down your force, domain, then you're going to go to group policy objects. We're going to right click and say new. He's doing it for 2 people, so I'm trying to go slow. We're going to right click and say new. Some people like to have one massive policy that does everything. I prefer a bunch of little policies that do one very specific thing. If you screw something up, I can always disable it. Click OK. And now we're going to edit that policy. I gotta look to see where this is. I can't remember. Okay, I want you to go under Computer Configuration, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Local Policy, then highlight User Rights Assignment. What makes an admin account versus a normal user account? Why can an admin account adjust the time and a normal user account can't? Why is an admin allowed to partition disk where the normal user can't? The admin gets his power from this window. So who can, right now I'm looking at the domain. It's also, I have the same window on each individual machine as well. But I want to create one policy that I can override all the ones on the local machine. But I can have things like, log in locally. Certain users I might not want to allow to log in. Change the system time. If I look, I'm going to show you the local machine. Give me 1 second. Let me show you the local policy. I'm going to look at the local security policy. And so who's allowed to change the system time? Administrators, local servers, server operators. Who's allowed to create page files? That's like a temporary memory space. Who's allowed to join it to the domain? Anyone. Who's allowed to, you won't know what that is, shut down the machine remotely. This is where an administrator gains his power. You know, you have security permissions on files that give people certain rights to access a file, to write to it, make changes. But this is for the system. Who's allowed to shut it down? Who's allowed to do things? Who, you know, this is what makes an administrator an administrator account. So I'm going to go back to my group policy. So we don't want, I'm going to say deny log on locally. I don't want anyone walking up to any normal computer in my network and signing in as join domain. That's not the purpose of this account. This account is only for deployments. You know, if someone was able to sign in using this account, it'd be like a back door and stuff. So we want to block this from signing in locally. So I want to define this policy. Add a group, and I'm going to type join domain. Actually, I'm going to remove that. I want to show you the difference. I'm going to click add a group, browse, then type join domain. It'll put the contoso in there for you.
So all this time, right?
Browse. Administrator domain. Representative.
All lowercase.
Yeah.
All you have to do is type join domain, and it'll add it for you. Is it not working?
I think I was satisfied all
Okay, so I'm going to click OK. By default, normal domain user accounts are allowed to join computers to the domain, but only 10 computers. After that, some administrative tasks will have to be done for you to allow them to join 10 more machines to the domain. We don't want to deal with that with the join domain account. That's the only purpose it's going to do, is join computers to the domain. So we're going to say add workstations to the domain. I'm going to define that. Add user in groups, browse, and type join domain. Guys, the explanations, if you go to the explanation tab, are awesome. Documentation. All these group policies, there is no way you're going to memorize where every group policy is. If you don't know something, what's the first thing you do?
Google it.
Google it. Go and Google, find out where they are. Do you want to hunt and peck through all of these settings? There's over 4,000 settings. If you don't remember where it is, just Google it. After a while, you will start to, the things that you use all the time, you will remember. But most of them you're not. You know, if I wanted to sign the TCP/IP packet differently with a weaker signature, so I can join Macs or Linux boxes to my domain, I'm not going to remember where that's at. I'm going to have to look it up. So we're going to do two things with this policy. We're going to prevent join domain from signing into any of our machines, except for one, and I'll show you how that's done. And we're going to allow join domain to have unlimited ability to join computers to the workstation, not be capped at 10. So we configured this policy, we're going to close it out. And we'll go back to group policy management. If I highlight the policy, then go to settings, it's a web page. Just click add, then close. There's my documentation. Every time I make a change on the DC, I need to document it. We are the worst people about documenting things we've done. This is a nice utility because once you've done it, you can actually go into this location and print it, or save it as a PDF or a web page. That's your documentation. All the information about when it was done is time stamped. So this is a good place for documentation. So we have this group policy. You want me to come back?
Yeah. Wasn't looking. I heard you say settings. Are you talking about import settings? Or?
No, highlight and click with there. Those settings.
Where's the group policy manager?
So you've done this right here.
Oh.
Highlight it. Just click add. Add. Close. Okay. And security settings.
Okay, so that's where your documentation. Now, this is just a place where the group policies are stored and created. They're not linked to anything. Do you understand the difference between, no, you probably don't. A domain controller is a computer on your network, just like any other computer. It's a tool to make changes to your domain. The domain controller is tangible. You can touch that machine. But your domain is not tangible. It's just a logical container. Your domain holds objects. It's a container that holds computer objects, user objects, group policy objects, links objects, permission objects.
What's the difference between a domain controller and Active Directory?
I'll explain that. So your domain is just a container that holds all these objects. This is just a place to store the objects. We're not applying the policy to anything yet. Active Directory is an LDAP server. It was created by Netscape years ago, and it's kind of like a database. Another word for Active Directory could be a domain. A domain is a container that holds computer objects. A domain controller is a tool that allows us to make changes to our domain. Okay, so if we want to make a change to our domain, which is, here's a good way to think of another way to think of a domain. A lion in Africa, he controls a certain area. That's his domain, that's his security context. You know, what he can control, that's what, you know, if you're the admin for that domain, that's your area of control. Okay, think of that domain as something like that. So we want to take this policy and have everyone in our domain read this policy. So what we're going to do
is go to our domain and link an existing GPO and choose that. So all the objects in this domain, all the user objects, all the computer objects, will read that policy.
No. Contoso. Link existing GPO. Link existing GPO. And I don't know where it is.
It's the last one.
No, I think
Joint domain, right?
Thanks.
Is it join domain one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, he like clicked it. I couldn't see it.
Way too fast.
Yeah.
Highlight that. Okay, I'm gonna come back to you. Change the settings. Okay. Okay, we're going to highlight Contoso and link an existing GPO and choose that to GPO. Okay, good. So, so right click. Link an existing GPO and choose maintenance. Okay.
If I highlight this policy, so it's linked to my domain, who's going to apply this policy? If you highlight it, right here. Authenticated users. That's a dynamic group. If you signed in, you automatically get enrolled in that group. So anyone who's an authenticated user, a computer account, if it signs in, it's an authenticated user or user account. So any computer or user account in this domain that signs in will get this policy. And this policy says, do not allow you to log in locally. So if someone tries to go to a computer in my network and sit down and sign in as join domain, this policy is going to prevent them from doing it, because you can't deny login locally. Also, this policy will apply to my domain controllers as well. And another portion of the policy says, allow join domain to join computers to your network, unlimited. So there's two settings. Deny login locally. So if someone tries to sit down at the domain controller and sign in as join domain, it won't allow you. But if someone from the network right-click the computer name, went to join computers to the domain and did that, it would work no problem. Well, they will have to sign in with another account to do it, but once they got in, they could use join domain to join it to the domain. The only problem is we don't want this policy to be read by our WDS. We want users to be able to sign in to the WDS server as join domain, because they're going to be the ones deploying the image. So that's the only machine that they should be able to sign in. So I'm going to go to, I gotta look for it. Delegation. Stay here at delegation. I just want to explain something. Microsoft has been going through this over the years to idiot-proof Windows. It was too difficult for students to understand, or for users, admins to understand this, so they created this. All we're really doing in editing this is changing this. These are like security permissions. You're used to them. If you right click a file, you see those security permissions. I guess this dialog box was too confusing for people. So they came up with a nice graphic little utility. The only problem is this can't do everything. So we want something that gives us a little more control. So we're going to go to delegation. We're going to click add. And we're going to type in CS. No, we're not. I'm going to click an object type. And I want to search for a computer account, not a user account. You put in your station number. Put a $sign at the end. CS01-WDS-DHCP $. I'll explain the $sign in a minute. Your computer name. CS, whatever your station number is, -WDS-DHCP $. If you refer to a computer account that's not part of the domain, there's no $sign. If you refer to a computer account that's part of the domain, there's a $sign. By default, it looks only for user accounts. We need to change it to look for computer accounts. So,
I think my DHCP is named differently. You want it to be the name of your DHCP computer, right?
Yes. Guys, just click OK, or then read, click OK again. We're going to make changes.
So that.
So you're going to correct that.
Okay.
Change it. Click OK, reboot.
I have the problem when I click OK. Is the name different or something?
Click OK. Go to your WDS. Again, guys, there's an issue with the script. The add-computer supposed to rename and join it to the domain at the same time. Sometimes it doesn't join it to the domain. I mean, sometimes it doesn't rename it.
Okay, click here. Click local.
And renamed it.
Change.
CS03-WDS-
DHCP
DHCP.
and then $sign.
No, it'll automatically add the $sign.
Thank you.
Okay, 1 second. I'm going to stop you. Computer description. Click change.
Oh.
There's the name. CS04 DS-DHCP. Click OK.
Restart.
Close. Then restart.
Then I choose read.
Yeah, enter.
Change.
Do you have to reboot both machines, or will it read it once it restarts?
Yeah.
It should
Click
read
OK.
it once it restarts.
Yeah, OK.
Click OK. That $sign just indicates it's a domain member, not a single reward.
So when I do check name, the $sign goes away.
It should be, when it comes here, it should be, But listen, you don't need to do this dance. I'm just going to just humor me for a second. I'm going to go in here and type administrator. People do this. Check name, then click OK. Just click OK. Have faith that you can type the word administrator. I see a lot of people, that's what he's talking about right here. He typed in the name of the server that said check name. It just verifies that you typed it right. Listen, if you click OK, you typed it wrong, it'll show it to you. Okay? It's what's the difference between apply and OK? Apply applies it but doesn't close the window. OK applies it and doesn't close the window. It does close the window. So you don't need to click apply then OK. Just click OK, it'll work. Okay, guys, remember I told you this was a dumbed down version? You know, trying to make it easy for admins. If you go to delegation, this is still a dumbed down version. We can't really do everything we need to do with this. If you click on advanced, this is what we used to have. I'm going to go to my computer, CS01. Uncheck everything and check deny apply the policy. Because they're an authenticated user, because it's a member of the authenticated user group, it's going to be able to read the policy and then apply it, just like every other machine. And that's going to mean you're not going to allow join domain to log in locally. But if they're granted that permission in one set of permissions, but I hit deny here, no matter where they're granted that permission, the deny will always take precedent. So I'm going to allow them to read the policy. I'm going to allow this machine to read the policy, but not apply the actual settings. Because I don't want to block join domain from logging in here. All other machines will read and apply the policy and block join domain from signing in. Except for this machine won't actually apply the policy. So it means it won't block join domain from signing in. We want join domain to be able to sign into this one machine. All we're doing, and it's saying, if you set this deny, it's going to take precedent over any other policy. That's good.
For the permissions, I'm not where it's giving read, write, or edit. What do I give it?
This, it doesn't matter, you're going to remove them
Okay.
because, oh yeah, okay, click OK. So you're going to highlight it, then go to advanced. Highlight your server, uncheck everything, scroll down, okay, and go apply to click OK. Okay. Do you remember what I said about hitting apply then OK? You don't need to. Just click OK and have faith this is going to save. There's no reason to hit apply then OK. The only reason to hit apply is if you want something to take effect but keep the window open. Okay, so guys, basically all I'm doing is preventing this machine from applying the policy. All other machines will apply it. I'm going to go back to the WDS. Close this out. And reboot this machine to make sure I get the policy. And I'm going to do the same thing to the file server. I'm going to go to the file server,
Sign in as domain admin and reboot. The file server is called FS.
So sign into the file server and reboot so you get the policy.
Just reboot the machine. I have to. Once I've rebooted, I'm going to go back to the WDS and verify I can sign in as join domain. I'm going to say other user, join domain, type in my password, and I'll be able to sign in no problem. Am I a domain admin or anything? No, I'm just a normal user account. I'm going to try to do the same thing for FS. I'm going to go to other user, type join domain. The signing method you're trying to use isn't allowed. So join domain is blocked from signing into this machine. But it has no problem to signing into the WDS. So we basically secured this account as much as we can. It's going to be used for distribution, and that's it. Guys, there's a command called who am I?
It should not. Okay. Let's see. Did you reboot the FS?
Yeah.
Okay. Go to here. Okay, I'm gonna have you run okay. GP resolve. No, one word. Space / Z space / scope space computer. Enter.
Maybe you have to update it first.
Type Contoso / administrator. How many people are getting denied login for the FS server? Okay. So GP resolve space / Z space / scope space computer. Enter. So this tells me all the policies that were applied. And Sign in as a domain admin. There's something wrong with that machine, but we're gonna fix that.
Okay, so guys, we haven't created our answer files. All we did was set up a user account that we can use in the future to deploy images. The other nice thing is, now I can pass this deployment of images off to another individual. It doesn't have to be the domain admin. As a domain admin, I'm not going to be spending my time deploying images. I can now get an intern or something to do it. Doesn't have to be anyone special. Because I can set up all the group policies. All I have to do is walk to the machine, boot it to the network, and name and approve. And I can automate everything else. We're going to stop here for today. We ran out of time. But